and welcome to It's Time to Know, an hour of inspirational discussion concerning the Rebbe's urgent request of Tut Altz was ihr kennt zu bringen Mashiach, and specifically his directive to learn in Yonei Geula u'Mashiach. To this end, we have assembled tonight a very distinguished panel of scholars who will talk to us about this vital and important topic. I am Abba Perlmutter, and I will serve as your moderator this evening. And let me introduce our panel. Rabbi Naftali Silverman is JLI Curriculum Development Team and also critical to developing all of the courses concerning Mashiach and Geula. We have also Rabbi Arla Loshak, who is also a member of the JLR Curriculum Development Team, and also has participated in authoring the courses concerning Geula and Mashiach. And we have Rabbi Lazer Gurkov, a shliach from London, Ontario, who is also a member of the curricular team and also has authored a course on Geula and Mashiach. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. This is an incredibly important topic. There are literally thousands of people that tuned into the Farbrengen that we did last month in honor of Ches Nissen. There's been a tremendous history around the world by Anash to really do this and to fulfill the Rebbe's requests. And we appreciate you taking your time tonight to address some of these questions. There's a lot of questions and there's little time, so I don't have to tell you what you have to do. I know you are all experienced and great speakers. What I'm going to do is I am going to throw out a question that is going to be directed to one of you, who will allow you to answer that question. And then if the other two panelists feel that they would like to comment on this, please feel free. Absolutely feel free to do it. All right. Now, we find ourselves this evening in a very, very tight Maimed and Matzif. Achenu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz HaKodesh are going through a very, very difficult period. And it behooves us, before we start the program, to say some Tilim. And we asked the Rabbeinu Shalom that he should send a bracha and a tzlach and a Yeshua to the Yidden that are living in Eretz HaKodesh. And I'm going to say Kapitel Chof and Kapitel Kuf Nun. Please, if you'd like to join with me, please do. Kapitel Chof. Lamnat Seyach Mizmar LeDavid Yan Chadenai B'Yam Tzara Yisagev Choshem El Yaakov Yislach Etzacham Mikodesh Umitzion Yisadeka Yiskar Kol Min Chaysecha V'Yelosh Yidash Nesela Yiten Lecha Chil Bavecha V'Chalatzos Choyemale Neran and Obi Yeshua Secha V'Shem Elenu Nidgol Yemale Adonai Kol Mishali Secha Ataya Daiti Kishi Adonai Mashiach Yaneinu Mishmei Kodshei Bigvuris Yesha Yaminai Eile Varechev Yele Basusim Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir Hey Makorov V'Nafolu Anachnu Kamnat V'Nisoidod Adonai Hoshia Melech Yaneinu V'Yam Kareinu. We'll do one more kapitel, Kapitel Kuf Nun. Last kapitel. Hallelujah, hallelujah, El Bekodshe, hallelujah, Bekiyahuzay, hallelujah, Bigvaroisov, hallelujah, Karev Gudlay, hallelujah, Beseika Shefer, hallelujah, Benevel Vechiner, hallelujah, Beseifu Machel, hallelujah, Beminim Beugov, hallelujah, Betilsley Shama, hallelujah, Betilsley Srua, Koilane Shama, hallelujah, hallelujah. The Rabbeinu Shalom should keep an eye, as he always does, the Inish Emelekechabam Reishish Hashanah, and he should be Mekoyim, the Bracha V'Nasati Sholim, Ba'or to Shchaf them Ve'ein Machrid. And may he take us out of this Golus, take it from Miyad Mamish with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu tonight. Let us get going on the program. We have a number of questions. And I would like to first address the first question to Rabbi Laser. Rabbi Laser, if I can see him, I don't see him on here, but that's my deficiency. 30 years ago, Rabbi Laser, the Rebbe came out with a call, Tut Altz was you can't. And then he explained what he meant is to learn in Yonei Geuli and Mashiach. Please talk to us a little bit. When and why do you think the Rebbe began to speak about this, specifically the mitzvah of Yonei Geuli and Mashiach?
That was a very pivotal time for us in Lubavitch. Those were my Bachar Sheyorn. I was a Bachar in Olatera those years. And I remember those years very well. And if anyone was in 770 on Chav Ches Nissen, then you remember that we spent the entire night digesting the Sikha, listening to the Sikha over and over again, trying to understand what the Rebbe meant when he said, Tut Altz vasir kent. And the next Shabbos, the Rebbe explained that he means that many things, but the new Tzav Hashah was to learn in Yonei Geuli and Mashiach. And this very question must have been asked back then, because several weeks later, the Rebbe gave the answer. Why in Yonei Geuli and Mashiach? And the Rebbe's answer was specifically, despite the fact that so many indicators around the world are demonstrating that we are inching closer and closer, that we are in the Hechsted site for Geula, nevertheless, it's not easy to persuade an entire nation that Mashiach is really on our doorstep. So kumt on schwer were the Rebbe's words. It's difficult. And so the Rebbe says, since Torah has the power to transform people, then if we learn Torah in and of itself, it has the ability to confer freedom, because no one is a ben chayrin unless he's Isaac Belimud Torah. But beyond that, if we learn about Yonei Geuli and Mashiach, the Rebbe says we'll start to live with it. What does it mean to live with Mashiach? So the Rebbe explained what he means, that our minds will constantly be thinking about Mashiach. We will always be anticipating Bias HaMashiach. And everything that we do, we will do that with the kavanah to bring Mashiach. So we will be living in a Mashiach atmosphere. We will breathe the air of Mashiach. We will drink the Kool-Aid of Mashiach. And in reality, that's actually what happens. When a person learns in Yonei Geuli and Mashiach, and as the Rebbe indicated at that Fabreng in Tazria Metzera, specifically when we learn the Rebbe's Sichos on Yonei Geuli and Mashiach, it shifts the way we think, and it shifts the way we absorb the day-to-day events. Everything that happens to us on a personal level has a Mashiach flavor. And that's something that comes directly out from learning in Yonei Geuli and Mashiach. That I've encouraged that we learn it in large groups, at least with 10 people, because that creates a chayas in and of itself. And the bottom line is that the Rebbe wants us to live with Mashiach in the same way that the previous Rebbeim demanded from us to live with Chassidus. Every morning you're supposed to learn Chassidus, you're supposed to meditate on what you learned and then daven with it. The Rebbe wants this to be our Chassidus of the day. The flavor of our Chassidus is all the Havi Li'Maisa Mashiach. It all leads us to Mashiach, and it begins with filling our minds with the limud of Yonei Geuli and Mashiach.
Well, very well said. Very well said. I remember that time too. I'm a, what you could say, a senior, and I remember that Sikha, and then the subsequent Verbrengens afterwards, and how the Rebbe tzach gekocht in this Indian gentleman. Would anybody like to add anything? Any comments? I know you guys are a little younger, but if there's something you'd like to add, feel free. No?
So actually, thank you very much, Rabbi Perlmutter. I'm a little younger than Rabbi Gurka, but I actually do remember I was ready here and learning in the Sifta and Maltera on Chav Ches Nissen. One of the things that's interesting about the Sikha, I don't remember, there are two Sikhas that ever talks about Yonei Geuli and Mashiach. There's Tazria Metzera, there's later on in Parshas Balak. I don't remember which Sikha this is offhand, but one of them, the Rebbe talks about the fact, as Rabbi Blazer said, that it's hard for us to free ourselves from a galus mentality. How do you free yourself from a galus mentality? The Rebbe says to learning Torah, befrat in Yonei Geuli and Mashiach, which is very interesting, because yes, there's a huge dagesh on Limud Yanigol Mashiach. The Rebbe did say Befrat Yanigol Mashiach, but from the Rebbe there's a mashmos over there. Limud HaTorah, no matter what you're learning, even if you're learning Masechtas Zvachim, or if you're learning a minor from the Mittel Rebbe, whatever it may be, that itself lifts you out of galus. Alachas kama v'kama when you're learning in Yanigol Mashiach. That was interesting. I don't know how many people pick up on that detail over there. That all Torah Batson helps in this area.
Absolutely correct.
I want to follow up on that. Although the Rebbe talked on several occasions about Limud Inyani Gula Mashiach, the Rebbe talked on many, many more occasions about Limud HaTorah in order to bring Mashiach. And among those, there were lots of mitzvahim that the Rebbe identified as specific things we can do to bring Mashiach. Simcha was one of them. Emunah and Tzipiyah was one of them. But Torah was a constant theme. And sometimes the Rebbe would specify Torah specifically in Inyani Gula Mashiach, and sometimes the Rebbe would talk about Torah broadly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Rabbi Loshak is quiet and he hasn't said anything. So my next question is going to be directed to Rabbi Loshak, of course. You know how that works, Rabbi Loshak. You're not going to stay quiet the entire evening. We're paying big bucks for this. And so after what Rabbi Gurkov and Rabbi Silverberg said, there's absolutely so many ways that a Yid can do to help bring Mashiach. I mean, there's Ma'aseh Mitzvahs B'Poyel, there's Avos Yisrael, there's learning Krishma at night and crying, whatever. But it seemed to be from that kufa that the Rebbe called as the Derech HaYeshar. It seemed that this was the best way to bring Mashiach Tzidkenu, besides, of course, doing the mitzvahs. You have to. Why? Could you speak to us a little bit about what do you think the reason was why the Rebbe was stated that this specifically in learning in Yani Gula Mashiach was the best way to bring Mashiach? And what do you think, what sort of an impact did the Rebbe want to create with this mitzvah?
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Perlmutter. So first of all, I thought I was going to get away with saying silent the whole time. You already didn't let me get away with it already.
No, it doesn't work that way. Doesn't work.
Now I know.
Usually I have to keep people quiet. No, this is a novelty for me.
Yeah. So I think the reason, or at least perhaps part of the reason why it's considered to be the Derech HaYeshar, the surest way of bringing Mashiach practically is the Rebbe obviously is giving us tools to address the very basic problem that exists with this entire topic. And that is that for many people, and myself included, I think this is a common theme, that the whole notion of Mashiach could be very, very abstract. It seems it's abstract. It's for many people, it seems to be almost unrealistic. It's just out there. It's not part of anybody's day-to-day life because you're literally telling people about a different world, about a different reality, and it's not the reality that we currently live in. So it's hard. It's challenging to be excited, to do anything about something that you know nothing about, and that's not part of your reality. So how do you solve that problem? So imagine I told you that I don't know how many countries there are in this world, but I'm sure there's a country that you've never heard of. So imagine I told you about a country that you've never heard of, and after 5 minutes, I want you to get excited about it. I want you to go there. I want you to tell your friends about it. You're like, I just heard about it 3 minutes ago. So the only way for you have to bring it into your reality. And once you bring it into your reality, then we can start having a conversation. Then automatically you're going to want to do things to make it happen. So the only way, Mashiach is not here but Poel Mamish, unfortunately, right this second, Mitzvah Shem next second. But the only way to bring that into our reality as best we can right now is to learn about it. And the moment you learn about it, you realize that it's a whole sugya. There's so much information. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to look into. There's so much to be mechadish if you'd like, once you get into it. And that's just the way it works to anything. The more you talk about it, the more you get engaged with it, and the more you relate to it, the more you hold it, you touch it, you look at it, you speak about it, it becomes a part of your reality. And it automatically engenders excitement, and it makes you want to say, oh, wow, this is something real. So what can I do to actually make it taka real?
So what you're saying is the Rebbe's idea was, to take a concept that many people did not take it like on their shoulders to learn about this on a daily basis. Rebbe literally wanted the Hamayin, everybody besides the Rosh Yeshivas and the Mashriim and Yeshiva and all those, to literally take this topic and make it a day-to-day impact on their lives. Is this what you think that this was what the Rebbe wanted to do?
Yeah, 100%. I honestly, I don't know how many Rosh Yeshivas are learning about Mashiach either. I don't think most people don't learn about it.
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I mean,
right. It's simply to bring it from way outside of there in the total abstract that most people have no idea what it is. And it's just this utopian, unrealistic dream that people fantasize about. And then when you open up this forum, you learn about it. Oh, no, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And now I want it to happen.
Good.
If I can jump in here for a quick moment.
Please, Rabbi,
when the Rebbe
go right ahead.
introduced this particular mitzvah, the Rebbe specified a problem. And this is the famous sikha about Arenu Niflois versus Niflois Arenu. And the Rebbe said, the pasuk is Arenu Niflois. I will show you, says God, the wonders. Says the Rebbe, if God were visible and we could see him and he can talk to us, every time he would perform a wondrous act, he'd be there to introduce it and to say, listen up, Laser, you want to see something wondrous, something totally messianic? Watch this. And it'll happen and I'll say, oh my goodness, Mashiach's on the way. As opposed to these wonderful things happening, but no one introducing it, no one contextualizing it. And then someone has to come along afterwards, someone being the Rebbe, and telling us, you know, that event that happened, that was an entirely Mashiach-tic event. Says the Rebbe, if we're learning in Yoni Mashiach Gula Mashiach every day, then we will have turned it on its head. Instead of Niflois Arenu, which by the way is again this year, Plois Arenu, it'll be Arenu Niflois. We will already be able to perceive these events as Mashiach-tic events because our mindset will be there. We will look for these things. We will see them in our everyday. I should also point out that the day that the Rebbe introduced this mitzvah, Shabbos Parshas Tazria Mitzayra, the Rebbe was talking about Tiferes, and the Rebbe pointed out that Tiferes, the Malchus Shabbat Tiferes. Tiferes is Torah, Malchus is Melech HaMashiach. So within Torah is the union of Melech HaMashiach. As it happens tonight, is which Sfira? Tiferes Shabbat Malchus. We're hopefully those of us who haven't davened yet haven't been still able to say Sfira Soimer if I tell you this Sfira, but Tiferes Shabbat Malchus, which is a fascinating connection to tonight.
Thank you so much, Reb Lazer. Reb Naftali, I'm going to allow you to incorporate it with your comments on this with my next question, if you don't mind. I'd like to direct it towards you. Rabbi Loshak brought up the word abstract, and Rabbi Lazer brought up the word messianic. I'm going to take out the word abstract and introduce a new idea that I would like you maybe to please address. The word controversial. Because to some people, I'm sure not to the people that we're broadcasting to, but there are some people out there in the world, a very small, minute number that think that talking about Mashiach and learning about Mashiach and stressing about Mashiach is controversial. Why? I mean, it's you use the word messianic, it right away puts into our minds, right away, lahavdil of dollars, something like that. How would you address someone, and of course, I don't know if we know anybody off who's like that, but if there was someone out there that would say to you, Reb Naftali, this is a very controversial thing. I mean, do you buy this, that there's a controversy about talking about Mashiach? And if so, how does this affect the way you would write a course and how you would frame this idea in your writing? If you don't mind, Reb Naftali, please, if you can address that.
So to quote what we had in the parsha of last week, and I don't remember the exact words, but the Teichacha, but one of the closest we had was maybe someone here about Kere, V'nastem ve'ein reidet eschem. You think there's someone chasing you, you think that what you're saying is controversial, and you think that someone is running after you, and ve'ein reidet. I think that we imagine much more controversy than there actually is in the world. The biggest issue that we have to face is not the fact that it's controversial. The biggest problem we have is that Mashiach is irrelevant. And the biggest blockage to people coming into the course of Mashiach is not because they have a problem with Mashiach, because they have no clue what Mashiach is. So it's a matter of bringing them in and educating them and making it relevant to their life And by the way, there's two things. You have to make it real and relevant because number one, people don't believe it. People think it's a fantasy. I'm talking about the average, I'm talking about the target audience of the average JLI student. They don't believe in Mashiach. And even if they did believe in Mashiach, it's not relevant to their lives. Even though, like, Al Derech Ma'ida Hava, when it comes, it comes.
Right.
No one cares. And the few people who are against, I don't think we have to target them. We have to go give them some hugs and kisses. I don't think we have to teach them about Mashiach at the moment and give them some gefilte fish and chicken soup. At the end of the day, what we're battling is not perceived controversy or perceived simon. Everyone respects us. And if anything, maybe people are a little intimidated by us, by Chabad, and the world is ready to hear it. The Rebbe spoke about this, that the world is ready to hear about Mashiach, and we have to teach it to them. And what we're dealing is the ignorance in this area.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I mean, those enemies that are going to just tap onto this and just say, Chabad is a messianic movement and stay away. Not going to win. We're not going to win them over, and there's no reason to spend time and waste time on them because no matter what you're going to say, no matter how many courses you're going to write, they'll find another time. And this is the age-old story. You wrestle with Dover Acher, you're just going to get dirty yourself. You're going to get dirty yourself.
It's like when Lubavitch said, "Well, Mashiach now," they had tightness on that.
Of course.
And whatever.
Yeah,
and then at every single stage was the what you said earlier was fine. But are you talking this? Are you talking that? Now, I do want to say one other thing, connected somewhat to the question that you asked earlier, and that is, in the first Maimer, Basi Laganis, the Rebbe tells us that we're Shvil edition. Our job is to continue the job of the edition. The job of the edition is that he went to a place where people didn't know Aleph, they didn't know anything, and they went and they spoke, and they were Mephits, the idea of Hashem Echad, of Kei Leilam. And Al Derech Zeh, a similar way, we're doing the same thing in Yonigul Mashiach. We're going with the word of the Rebbe, the Gias Man Gulaschan. But in the Maimer there, the Rebbe says over there that it's not enough to go and tell people. It's not even enough that people should be mekabel what you're saying. There's a very big dogish in the Maimer over there in Al Tikra Vayikra El Vayakri. It's not enough. It's not enough that we are going and telling people and even convincing people that Mashiach is coming. It has to be shliach is shliach. You have to make another. And by the way, and the Rebbe doesn't say shliach mevi shliach. That you import another shliach from Crown Heights. Shliach is shliach means that in your makom mashlichus, the person who you are speaking to is going to go and bring it to someone else. How do you get someone to be vayakri? How do you get someone not only to be makabel but also to go on to carry it on to the next person? There is no way other than limud haTorah. When you teach someone in Yonigul Mashiach, at that point, what you're doing is you're like breaking that barrier between you and that person. Instead of, you're the rabbi, you know everything. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to believe. Tell me, Mashiach's coming. Mashiach's coming. You want to say Mashiach now? Say Mashiach now. You want me to do a mitzvah? I'll do a mitzvah. When you learn with a Yid, and this is what JLI is really all about. And I never developed limud haTorah. The Rebbe didn't use those words by any other mitzvah. I never developed. The Rebbe used it about limud haTorah, because I never developed in a way of Al Tikra Vayikra Vayakri, because 5,000 shulchan aren't conquering the world. It's the 5,000 times 5,000 times 5,000 exponentially. The shliach, it's a shliach, and the only way to do that is by teaching them, to the point that the chushi haTalmud become the chushi harav. Going and teaching Yonigul Mashiach is making everyone who you're talking to, they're going to talk to the next person, they're going to talk to the next person. It's a pnimius and a whole different farnem in Gansen.
Very well said. You've convinced me. You have absolutely convinced me, and
very good. Now go tell someone else.
And this can only be said with such passion by someone who is the premier curricula producer of JLI. I mean, if you see his passion, and then you see his passion comes out in the courses that I myself teach from you, Naftali, you see that your passion permeates every course that you write and all of the courses that come out of JLI. So I am very, very curious. I mean, I am a shliach here in Long Beach, California, and I deal with a certain segment of people over here. I teach JLI. I see feedback from my talmidim, quote unquote. But I would be interested, very interested, from all three of you, because two of you are living in Crown Heights and are the writers, the producers of these courses, and Rabbi Laser, who's written, as a shliach also, of course. I'm extremely interested to find out if you can share with us some of the feedback that you've gotten from shluchim, from students, participants in JLI, somehow what has been the impact to the students, to the people, like you said, shliach eiseh shliach, from the second rung. Can you tell us, share some of us? Maybe we would start with Rabbi Loshak and then Rabbi Naftali, of course, and Rabbi Laser. Please, all three of you, I would love to hear some real impact stories here tonight.
So, Baruch Hashem, we've had the privilege of producing a lot of curriculum on Yonigol Mashiach here in JLI in the recent past. And I think a lot of the impact, obviously, like Rabbi Naftali's shared before, much of the impact is with the students who are learning this material. But I think obviously a very major important part of the impact is the shluchim themselves.
Rabbi Loshak, excuse me. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm hearing feedback. So either you're too close to your partner.
That's not a bad thing in general, but today
Stay away from him. Stay away from him. He's going to convince you to start learning Torah. Stay away from that silver ball.
I'm muted. It should be fine now.
Next thing you know.
Yes, it's better now, right?
Now I hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I think the first step is, before we talk about the impact that it has on the students, the impact that it has on the shluchim is equally important. We'll talk about the impact that it has on us writing the new curriculum. We'll talk about that soon, but
right.
The impact on the shluchim is definitely incredible. I was privileged, obviously, to write. There's a number of different types of curriculum that JLI produced on Yonigol Mashiach in the recent past. I was privileged to write one that was, it was a series of many courses. It was given to a lot of different shluchim. It actually came to us from the shluchim themselves, which was interesting, that they approached us, and many of them were actually my personal friends. And what I kept on hearing from them after we made the courses and produced it and gave it out to them was just how much it was able to finally bring them into these ideas and to get them excited about it. Because, I think it's every shliach's dream in a way to be able to teach these topics in a real way and to get people excited about it, but they lack the tools to be able to do so, and it's not anybody's fault, obviously. I mean, I don't know if I would have the tools if I didn't really spend the time preparing and looking into it. So the moment these tools are available, just to see the shluchim excited about it, it was exciting for me to see so many of my own friends telling me that, wow, we finally have something to teach, and it's getting us excited about it. And once, like Rabbi Naftali said, once you're excited about it, that's the idea of eiseh shliach. Once you're excited about it, it automatically will get the people around you, the people you're talking to, excited about it as well.
Yeah, great. Reb Laser, can you, I know you teach JLI, you've written for JLI on these topics. Is there a story, something that you could share with us about the impact from the people, the frozen chosen, as they call the Canadian Jews? If any, and have you warmed them up a bit? I'm sure you have.
So I don't work in JLI Central. I'm a satellite JLI writer. So most of the feedback comes right back to JLI Central, and I think Naftali is the one who's best positioned to answer that question.
A real gentleman. So there you go, Naftali. He just lobbed you a softball.
I cede the rest of my time to the gentleman from Crown Heights.
There you go.
Thank you very much. So there's been, Baruch Hashem, there's been feedback both on the parts of shluchim who are very excited about this. I have here two emails actually that I got. One from a shliach. One was sent by, this was shared with me by a shliach following lesson 1 of the current JLI course, which was all about Effen and the Eigen. So one shliach sent me, someone who wrote to him, by the way, I'm convinced based on the statistical analysis you presented in the class tonight that the Mashiach is on our doorstep, and we all have to do is open the door. And then after lesson 2, remember this course is in the middle. The feedback usually comes more at the end of the course, but lesson 2 is all about dir betachtonim. A shliach forwarded to a email that a student wrote. I just wanted to write and say that this class blew my mind. I feel like I have to sit still a while and just breathe. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing this again. I always feel close to God, but right now I feel even closer. Thank you again for these classes. I know that's a small sampling, but Baruch Hashem, the feedback, the Vaila has been amazing. And the main thing is, there hasn't been any I wouldn't say the main thing, but there hasn't been any negative feedback. In other words, the resistance is non-existent. It's just a matter of people needing to be held by the hand and brought in. And if I may,
You may.
sorry, since Rabbi Laser ceded his time to me, there was one thing I wanted to mention before, something very interesting. It's related to the previous questions. We all know there's this concept of be'efen hamiskabel. We've heard these words many times, that but the Yanim and Mashiach has to be be'efen hamiskabel. What does be'efen hamiskabel mean? So many people have different opinions. There's what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say and how you have to say it. If you look in the Sikha of the Rebbe, Parshas Chayesara, Tafsh to the base, and look at the Sikha, I want to read 4 lines from the Sikha. The Rebbe says, "Von dem Kindes Hashluchim dachten kumen und lehavi achlot des Tevis v'yeder shliach darf sich allein zugreten und zugreten alle Jiden de Mekoime uveirei v'chulu zu mekabel sein Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu. Durch dem, was is masber dem Ein von Mashiach, kim mevur beteir shebiksav ubeteir shebalpeh be'efen hamiskabel zu jederen lefi sichle v'avanosoi Kelo b'miyuchad durch limud inyanim Mashiach u'geula u'befrat be'efen von Chokma bina vadas." When you read it once and twice and a third time, you realize the Rebbe is saying, teaching Mashiach, speaking about Mashiach be'efen hamiskabel means by teaching people inyanim geula Mashiach. That is be'efen hamiskabel. That's how you get the people.
Straightforward.
So I want to jump in for the last 30
Rabbi
seconds.
Laser, if you don't
that
mind,
my
Rabbi
colleague-
Laser, Rabbi Laser, I'm going to give you time to speak, but I'd also like you to also add to what you're about to say now. Please, a little back, tell us how writing about this has impacted yourself and what it took from you to write one of these courses, if you don't mind. So just
I'll
piggyback
definitely
off your
do that in
answer.
a second, but I want
Please.
to address the controversy question. Came back up
Okay.
again about the Efen HaMiskabel aspect. 30 years ago, when the Rebbe told us to go out and to announce to the world that Mashiach is coming, the Rebbe addressed this controversy question. Wie können reden wilde Sachen? How can we say fantastical things? Today, it's no longer fantastical. The reality is the world is a receptacle and the world has already received it. I remember as a Bachar and Tafshin Nun, we were chatting with each other. We were saying that there will come a time, say 20 years from now, when the world will receive Miftzah Mashiach the way they've already received Miftzah Tefillin, which was roughly 20 years before that. And indeed, it has happened. So the question, what do we do about the fact that Mashiach is controversial, is an old question. It's no longer a contemporary question. Now, to answer your second question, how it has impacted me as a writer. So when I spent months and months and months researching the material that eventually became lesson 1 of the current Mashiach course, every single conversation that I had with people was about indicators of Mashiach is happening now. Look at the world, look at events. And these weren't events that I was researching from 6 months earlier or 12 months earlier, but current affairs in the news today, what things that were happening today. But because my mindset was such, as the Rebbe was discussing, we mentioned earlier, learning in Inyanim Geula Mashiach makes you aware and uber sensitive about events in the world and contextualizing them in a Mashiach way. Everything that happened to me screamed Mashiach. And I was walking around telling people about it. And indeed, I was exuding an energy of Mashiach, and it certainly is infectious. Similarly, when I got involved in the Mashiach series over the past summer that Rabbi Loshak was talking about, it had a huge impact on myself. The idea that learning Geula Mashiach, similar to learning Rambam, had become something that we do by rote, suddenly had become something that I started doing with passion, because writing about it, delving into it, made it real for me. It awakened it in me. It's as if a fire had gone on, a light had gone on inside. And the same is true with the current Mashiach campaign, the Tut Altz campaign, and the lessons that we're producing for it. It makes it very real when you immerse yourself in it, because you need to do that in order to write it. And that's the objective. So the Shliach gets a completed product and doesn't need to immerse themselves in it so deeply in order to teach it, because all the research has been done and all the immersion has already been fulfilled, performed by the writer. But the objective that Rebbe wanted is that we should each immerse ourselves in it at this level, to this extent.
Thank you so much. I'd like to just address this to our two friends in Crown Heights, the JLI curriculum team. I mean, I've been teaching JLI for a lot of years, and these courses are just home runs. I mean, anybody that doesn't take JLI, if there's a shliach out there that's not teaching JLI, you don't know what you're missing. I mean, I was around shlichus before JLI came around, and you busted your head, and you had to learn how to read Hebrew. And then if you didn't know the thing, you had to call your Rosh Hashiva to ask him a quote because it was in Aramaic, and you fell asleep during that week. So, and then these guys come out there and they just revolutionize adult Jewish education. I mean, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. But this strain of courses about Mashiach and Geula, this is something special. And I was wondering if in your own experience of writing this, does it take is it different? You approach the subject differently? Because I know, like, for example, Naftali, you write on, I mean, so many different topics. I mean, from psychology to history to Torah. I mean, from so many. Is there something unique about approaching this, knowing how precious this was to the Rebbe? I mean, of course, the entire Torah was precious to the Rebbe, but specifically, is there something, a unique approach to doing this? If you don't mind, Naftali Narl, if you can address this.
So I think the answer lies in a few words you said in your question, that yes, definitely, because we all know as Lubavitch Chassidim that this was so dear and precious to the Rebbe. So I produce and write and research hundreds of different topics all the time and just pumping up material constantly. And when it came to writing about this, it was definitely, I felt more of an achrayus to do my due diligence. That's number one. To do the proper research to make sure that I'm really covering all my bases, so that the information that's being presented is researched properly and full of the appropriate amount of teichen. And equally important, or maybe even more important, was to inject just a little bit more of the oomph in the class, in the lessons that are prepared, because, like you said, there's nothing more important. So if we're going to present any material, if we're going to try to make let me say it differently. If we're going to make a convincing argument about anything in Torah or anything in Yiddishkeit, this is where we're going to have to be our most convincing. Especially, as Naftali mentioned, that we're battling with so much of what people feel that it's irrelevant. So our job is to bridge that gap and say, no, this is not irrelevant at all. This is extremely relevant. So for me as the writer, the researcher, whatever it is, it's a tremendous achrayus, and it's energizing to really throw your guts into the writing and say, I'm going to make a convincing argument and go all the way.
Thanks. Thank you. Naftali, would you want to add something to that, or?
I have nothing to add specifically to what Navarro said, and 100% the achrayus was felt over there.
Wow.
In terms of what was different about this course, for me, working on Moshiach, I remember way back when I was a bacher, I went once on Ta'alucha, we walked into the shuas, and the Gabbai walked over, who's going to speak, and please don't say the mosquito sikha. They had heard that the staying up a whole night. Why we stay up on Shavuos the whole night? The problem with teaching with the Young Mashiach, the challenge that we had is that the topics we're talking about, we're giving material to shluchim. What do shluchim talk about? They talk about Mashiach all the time. Every speech has about the B'tachtonim. So what are we going to talk about? Gog Magog? We're going to talk about Eliyahu Navi. We're not going to talk about the B'tachtonim because the shluchim talk about it. That's also not an option. Can move on.
Right.
We ended up writing 3 lessons on Dir B'tachtonim at a course of 6. And it was very challenging to write a topic which, number one, the shliach is familiar with and has spoken on many occasions. And number 2, the average balabas and the average student also has encountered on many times, but to write it in a fresh way and give a totally different havana and systemize it to the point that it's interesting. Baruch Hashem, from the feedback that's been coming in so far from the instructors, that was accomplished. And the people are really feeling enriched by these. And to me, that's the biggest challenge, to give over a topic that everyone knows, but to open up the eyes and to present it in a different way.
Tremendous job. I'd like to, for the next part of tonight's program, I'd like to switch a little bit we heard about the background and the writing and the importance of this, but I'd like to get maybe something a little bit more practical advice that I'm going to be asking you, gentlemen. I know that all three of you have been involved in writing curriculum and you've absorbed the topic, and just, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I ask you, give me a couple of sentences about this issue, it's not a problem. So I'm standing in an elevator and I'm coming down the elevator with Mr. Teitelbaum, who is a prominent lawyer here in Long Beach, far from Yiddishkeit and far from anything that we're talking about this evening. I mean, doesn't come to my show, won't support me. But now we're going down from 32 floors down to floor number 1. And it's me and this guy. And now I feel an achrayus as the Rebbe Shliach, and Shliach is a Shliach. Naftali convinced me, to do this. I want to give him an elevator pitch. Can you help me? Give me an elevator pitch for someone that I can not convince him, but at least for an uninitiated Yid about this topic of Mashiach. What do I say? I'm going to ask maybe Reb Lazer, who maybe has some more experience in this on a practical basis.
I suppose I would ask, you said his name is Rabbi Teitelbaum, Mr. Teitelbaum?
I mean,
I suppose I would ask.
I don't want to give away his real name because the shluchim in my area are starting to start soliciting him, so I can't really divulge who he really is.
I suppose I would ask Ploini Almaini.
Fictitious.
I suppose I would ask Ploini Almaini if he came across a tourist brochure, a glossy one, that promised a tourist destination in which everything he would ever wish for would be fulfilled, every fantasy would come true, and there'd be no headache or confusion or complication whatsoever. And what's more, it's free. Would he believe
including
it?
Not losing your luggage? Okay.
And of course, the answer would be no, that's a fantasy. But what if I could give you 1 or 2 things that you could do to make it a reality? Would you like to go visit that place? And if the answer is yes, then I have a destination for you. A destination not so much in space, but in time, that eventually will take over the entire world.
Excellent. Reb Naftali?
I don't have an elevator pitch. That's why I write 90-minute lessons.
I got you.
But I do want to say something else. You're making a big differentiation between the Mr. Teitelbaum, who's a Freie Yid, and the Mendel Cohen, who's a Frugal Lubavitcher. The one thing that my experience here in JLI has taught me, very often there isn't a big difference. No matter the topic, one thing about JLI courses is that the same courses that are being taught by you in your Chabad house, the people who are self-identified as secular, I teach them here in Crown Heights, the Lubavitchers, and it works in both places. Because ultimately, we all struggle with the same things, perhaps to a different degree. So no matter what the topic of the JLI lesson is, whether it's simcha, anger, taivas, kibbud aim, hashgacha pratis, everyone struggles in these areas. So if I'm going to give you a big idea that can shift you in that area, it's going to help you if you're a Freie person out there in California, or if you're from a person here in Crown Heights. Moshiach also, if the issue that we're dealing with is relevance, which Lubavitcher can look me in the face and say that Mashiach is as relevant to me as it should be? So the big ideas that we're talking about are equally applicable. So when you're writing a lesson, if you can, what's what I'm looking for, zone in on the human challenge involved over here, you're talking to everyone. So it's not a Fruma Yid versus Freie Yid, it's what does a Yid struggle with in this area, and you address that, you're good.
So I'm just piggybacking on what you just said, of course, which is very interesting, because my thought was that, you do have it uninitiated. The Mendel Cohens, of Crown Heights, when they hear about the word Mashiach, they have different issues. The Teitelbaums of the world, the uninitiated, we're like, is this really going to be the first thing that I'm going to bring up to him? I mean, Reb Lazer, just drilled it home. I mean, who doesn't want to go there? I'm signing up. I mean, to Fantasy Island, nothing to talk about. But if you don't mind, Naftali, and also to the other panelists, now that you brought up that issue about, let's say, Lubavitchers and people that have already learned already, And the guy comes to you and says, you know what, Naftali, I mean, I'm just fatigued about this. I am just literally fatigued. I mean, we learned so much about Gula Mashiach. We did so many things already. It's been 30 years since the Sikh of Chavches Nissen. I mean, what do I do? What do I want to do? I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I mean, you know what else is there? What else is there to do? What do you say to this guy that you're talking about? That could be your neighbor, you know, the across the street. In a practical sense, what do you say to this guy?
Okay, so yes, so I'm gonna continue on the thread. Yeah, I'll continue on the thread that Rabbi Naftali was saying, and it's relevant to this question as well. That it's really about identifying what Mashiach answers in a person's life. Again, answering that, going back even further to this panel, answering why is it relevant, and if we can understand why, if we identify how and why it's relevant, that'll address all those issues. It's your elevator pitch. It answers the fatigue, and then it makes it relevant. So, and the reason why it's relevant, it's probably the same reason for most of for any yid. If his last name is, you know, Teitelbaum in your elevator, or Cohen in Crown Heights, or Loshak here in JLI, it doesn't make a difference. And again, there's many approaches. I think different things will work for different people, but I think the overall big idea is that people want to know where life is going. This is a basic question. I mean, anybody should have, and if they don't have, if you just probe a little bit, they definitely have it at some point. Is that what is this? We're all here in this world. We're all trying to be relatively good people and do good things, with everybody's conception of what that means on a Yiddish level, on a human level, both. And ultimately, people do want to understand where's it all going? What's the point? What's the end of the game? And like the famous mashal of the army, right? A soldier could be the most skilled soldier, could be the most trained, has the best skill, everything is in place. But if the soldier doesn't know why he's fighting, then it's completely pointless. And you could have the most skills possible. You could be the bravest, strongest, fiercest soldier. If you don't know why you're fighting, you'll definitely flame out really, really quickly. So this is why Mashiach is so important for everything we do. And so you're fatigued about Mashiach, it's because we're forgetting. We're getting caught up with the minutiae of everyday life, and you're just trying to do another mitzvah on every level. You're just trying to do the everyday mitzvahs, or on a human level, you're just trying to get by and, you know, make sure your family's okay, make sure you can pay your bills. These are important things, but if you stop for a second and ask it, like, where's it going? What am I doing with all this? What's the end of this game? The moment you go back to those basic core questions, I think a lot of the fatigue falls away, because the only answer ultimately is going to be, we're all working towards an end goal. This is why we're fighting in this battle. This is the war that we're fighting, and this is the battle we're trying to win. And if we have that, and again, goes back to learning about it, learning why it's the battle, learning basic concepts of Dirbat Achtoinim, and again, not getting caught up with lazy terms that we learn when we are in yeshiva and we're regurgitating again and again, but giving it proper oisius that makes sense to us and to the people we talk to. So we get excited about it, and I don't know if all, but a significant portion of that fatigue could fall away.
Rabbi Blazer, do you agree with your co-panelist, Rabbi
I
Lush?
do agree, and I want to elaborate on one piece. The Rebbe struggled with this mindset throughout the Nesius, and you can see it as a theme in the Sichos almost every time Mashiach came up, not as a mention, but as a subject, as something that the Rebbe belabored for more than 3 minutes. The Rebbe would address the fatigue factor and the factor of people being apathetic. And the Rebbe one time said, how do you know that if you daven every day for as Temach David that you're asking for Mashiach to come today, and that you're not asking for Mashiach to come whenever he chooses to come? And the Rebbe's response at one particular occasion was so sharp and poignant that it really takes your breath away. The Rebbe said, suppose that you can change the words of that prayer, and instead of asking for as Tzemach David Avdecha, you're asking for your sister who's lying ill in the hospital to have a refuah shalema. And how would you phrase that prayer? Would you say, Ribono shel olam, Ribono di alma kula, could you please do me a favor and heal my sister whenever it so pleases you? Whenever you can make the time and get around to it? Or would you stand up and say, please, God, Father in heaven, maybe right now? if we feel on a personal level that Gullus is just not okay, that there are such heavy problems with the way we're living life, and that if it feels comfortable in the very brief window of prosperity that we're enjoying at this particular time in history, it's just a symptom of the depth of the concealment of the Rebbeinu Shalom in Gullus, that even the haster is b'pchinas haster. If we only come to realize that we're living in constraints, in a straitjacket, then how can you have any other desire but for an instant relief for the coming of Mashiach? And that would be true on all levels. It would be true on the socioeconomic level. It would be true on a spiritual level. It would be true on every single level and every aspect of life, as Rabbi Loshek was talking about before. And of course, we have to add the Rebbe's flipped the script. The Rebbe was a brilliant script flipper. Every time there was something that people came and said, here is what I'm seeing, the Rebbe would flip the script. And when people would say to the Rebbe, so many years have passed and he still didn't come, what makes you think he's coming now? The Rebbe's response, both in Yechidus letters, correspondence, and Sichos, was if he hadn't come in so many years, then it's even more high time for him to come. If yesterday you expected him and another day has yet passed, then how much more so that we expect him today?
Give the last word on this question to Reb Naftali, if he has anything to add to this.
I once heard
Since you brought it up.
I once heard a beautiful mashal on this. So imagine a woman is pregnant. She has a due date. And the due date comes and goes, and the baby is not born. A day passes, 2 days pass, 3 days pass, a week passes. At what point do you just give up and say, well, the baby's probably never going to be born? I'm fatigued from waiting for this baby. It must be, it's just not coming. And as the Blazer said, no. Every day that passes, okay, so it's mamish atat. If yesterday was atat, today it's atat, and tomorrow it's atat, because if the whole Torah mitzvah is about Mashiach coming, so Mashiach's coming. And if Mashiach isn't coming, what's this whole game that we're playing? With Torah, every single thing we're doing is Mashiach. So if he didn't come yesterday, that means all the more the reason that he has to be coming today. However, many of us look at Mashiach as, we're living our life, and one day, boom, plump, there's going to a plunk, a Mashiach's going to plunk into the room. And since I've been waiting for him for the last 7 years and he didn't come, so I'm stopping today also he won't plunk in. But if you understand that that's not what it is, that's all cumulative, then every day that passes, we become even more, the tzipiyah becomes even greater, even bigger, which leads to a related point, but a very important point about Mashiach. Throughout the generations, there were many Gedolei Yisrael who made kitzim. They said when Mashiach, they said a certain year when Mashiach's going to come. Today, I saw Ksaviyad from the Rebbe. I was in preparation for this. I was going through some Kisvayad. It's somewhat of a famous Ksaviyad. I think it was to Shalom Mendel Simpson Oliver Shalom. He wrote to the Rebbe that he met with someone. This is the very beginning of Nesius, and the person was writing his warm yachas to Lubavitch and the Frierdiker Rebbe. The first time the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America in 1929, 1930. But then it says after Frierdiker Rebbe came to America in 1940, then as abgesagt, no more connection. Why? Because that's when Mashiach, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave his catch. He said Mashiach is coming in Tavshin Beis. And that's why he moved away, Misrachik. So there's a tzedek from the Rebbe to Shalom Mendel. And says, if so, yes, be Misrachik. And the Rebbe gives a list of around, 15 people, the Rasag, and Rashi, and the Rambam, the Ramban, the Rechaim, whatever. All these people made kitzim. Good. So there are many people say there, people made kitzim. They came, they went. And then I never made a ketz. And we waited, it's gone. The Rebbe didn't give us a ketz. A ketz means a certain year which is auspicious for Mashiach to come. The Rebbe told us, Nigmar Avedis Avirurin. Avedis is finished. The Rebbe told us, Efen Etegen, Pu'ulas HaMashiach has already begun on the world. So that's not, the train can't go backwards. So every day that passes, that means the train moved a little forward. You have to wait for it a little more. There's no such thing as the time passing. Time passing is when you're talking about it, say, Eis Ratzon. The Rebbe wasn't talking about it, Eis Ratzon.
Gentlemen, the hour that we've been allotted to this, I'm not sure how much time they bought on Zoom and on Facebook, so I don't want to take advantage of it. But we have many more questions that if we go over, but I can't go without asking you to please, all three of you address this. The Rebbe was always a bottom line person. I mean, all the terutzim, as Rabbi J.J. Hecht used to like to say, all the terutzim and all the excuses out the window. Goodbye. Out the window. Our Rebbe was all about action. We have in front of us right now, I don't know how many people are online watching us, but it's a huge crowd, I understand, a big crowd. You have this opportunity now to address these people to why. I know many of them already have been inspired and already excited about this mitzvah of Geula Mashiach. But right now, I'd like you to spend a few minutes, the time that we have left, if you can, to tell the Olam, hundreds, thousands of people that are watching us now, because we want to leave tonight knowing that we have opened up and started a flame, even in those that already have a spark and started. Give us your best shot of why you, Mr. and Mrs. sitting in the online world over there, why the Rebbe meant specifically you, not Abba Perlmutter, not Rabbi Lashak, not Rabbi Gurkov, not Rabbi Silverberg, but you. The Rebbe meant absolutely. Many of us saw that emotional dollars where the mother came to the Rebbe and cried to the Rebbe that she wants Mashiach. The Rebbe needs to bring Mashiach. She wants to see her son. It's heart-rending. It could literally rip your heart out of your body. And the Rebbe said, I said it, he means you. And the Rebbe was pointing to every individual in the room upstairs. So if you don't mind, gentlemen, maybe we'll start with Rabbi Lazer, and then we'll go to Rabbi Naftali and Rabbi Arla, and tell us, one, why to get inspired, and number two, if we're inspired already, where do I start? I want to. Where do I start? There's so many. Do I just pick a sikha? Do I pick a mimer? How do I get going? Rabbi Lazer, if you don't mind, convince me, not me, but the me in the world.
Where I live, I'm sure, as it is where everyone lives, there are lots of Yidden that come from Eretz Yisrael for a year or two or three, and then they go back. So one time, one of the shlichim was returning, and he said to me, Rabbi Lazer, he said to me, maybe you come with me to Israel. So I smiled and I said, I'm coming with you to Israel right now because Mashiach is coming. He says, yeah, but until Mashiach comes. I said, look, to bring Mashiach, I said, you can't all be in Eretz Yisrael and pull from one place. You need to pull from Israel. And I need to push from London, Ontario. And Rabbi Perlmutter needs to push from Long Beach, California. And the JLI staff at JLI Central need to push from Crown Heights. And we all have to push together. Naftali was talking earlier about the Kitzin. Let me say, the Rebbe pointed out, the Frierdiker Rebbe did something different. He didn't make a ketz. He informed us that we transitioned into the era of Mashiach, which means that not that he's coming specifically in Tafshin Aleph, he's coming, now he's ready to come at any time. When the Rebbe said in Tafshin Nun that the Avodas HaBedurim has finished and now our Avodah is L'kabel Pnei Mashiach, it means that every one of us needs to internalize Mashiach along the lines that we were discussing before. If you look in Tanya and Perek Lamed Pei, Lamed Vav, you find that all of Klolos Neshamas Yisrael comprises one collective neshama. And the reality is that this collective neshama needs to internalize Mashiach, needs to be prepared to greet Mashiach. If any one of us is not internalizing Mashiach, then the collective neshama is lacking. And that is why it's not sufficient for one Yid to be uber passionate and the next Yid to be apathetic. We all have to buy in. It's our individual responsibility. The chelik ba'olam comes along with us, but our hashpah on the chelik ba'olam that is assigned to us is to help them internalize Mashiach. L'kabel pnei Mashiach tzidkenu is a highly individual endeavor, and we each need to do it for ourselves. I can't eat your dinner, and you can't eat my snack. I can't be Makabel Pnei Mashiach for you. You can't do it for me. But I can inspire you and you can inspire me, and together we can get it done.
Where do I start? You've convinced me. What do I do first? Do I take a JLI course? Is there a specific sikha that you could recommend to me? There are people out there that I know are asking this question. They would like to know from Rabbi Laser tonight. Please give me. Should I try buy Likutei Sichos from Nun Beis? What do I do?
I want to tell you that there are many lovely books, both in Hebrew and in English, on Mashiach. If you go to Kahas, if you go to Sichos in English and start perusing these books, Migoila Legeula is an incredible resource because it gives you snippets from Sichos all over the entire spectrum of the Rebbe's Torah. Start learning, or if you are already learning, enhance your learning, share it with others, as the Rebbe discussed, learn it with a group, learn it with a minyan of Yidden, but learn it in a way that is a daita denafshe, that is highly relevant to you on a personal level, and make Mashiach part of your day-to-day consciousness. So that when you're eating, you're thinking, I'm nourishing myself so that I'm ready to receive Mashiach when he comes. When you're putting on tefillin, you're saying, I'm putting on tefillin to bring him faster. When you sit down to learn, you're saying, I anticipate 1,000% that I'd be interrupted in my current Torah study session by the coming of Mashiach.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Laser. Reb Naftali.
Yeah. So first of all, it doesn't really make a difference what you learn. If the purpose is immersion, any Yanigol Mashiach, as long as it's done the Kriyas, as the Rebbe will say, Kriyas Zman, Kriyas Nefesh, it really doesn't make a huge difference. If you learn about Yanigol Mashiach, whatever you do, it's not about a certain amount of time. Whatever you're doing now, do it more often. If you're not doing it at all, start with once a week. If you twice a week, whatever it may be, it's about the hashpah it has on you. That's number one. At the same time, there are things that could be recommended,
Please.
which doesn't take away from the first thing that I'm saying. There are certain things that will help in certain areas, but Bechlolos,
Right.
Mashiach is regardless what it is. So you mentioned Nun Aleph Nun Beis, absolutely. Absolutely crucial for every Lubavitcher to learn Nun Aleph Nun Beis and chazer them. And not only to learn the Bilti Muga, but I would say also to learn, not only to learn the Muga, but also to read some of the Bilti Muga Sichos, listen and watch. Because in addition to Yanigol and Mashiach, it's impossible not to be impacted by the Rebbe's sense of excitement, urgency, passion, absoluteness, vados. It's such a pick-me-upper. Every time you listen to a sikh like that, it Pasha picks you up. For the next day, you walk around, it's Andres. It's Andres.
Absolutely.
That's that. And I would say one more thing. My Havizor Tfei is Tanya.
Is what? I'm sorry.
Tanya. I teach Tanya in different venues. And everything ultimately, Yisoid and Tanya. If you want to have the Yisoidus of any Inyan and Chassidus, you go to Tanya. You want to have Yisoidus understanding of what Tanya is, of what Mashiach is, you have to learn Tanya Prakim, Lamed Vav, Lamed Zayin well. So put that down on your list. Tanya, Prakim, Lamed Vav, and Lamed Zayin. In addition to that, I'm actually just started teaching Igeres HaKodesh Siman Chaf. Some people get scared when they hear that, oh, there you go, you have a headache. You can send some Advil your way. And because I was scared of learning it, I never touched it. But now that I have to teach it, so I'm forced to learn it. And I'm finding over there Givaldik Yechidushim in the area of Dira B'Tachteinu. I never realized that there's stuff over there in terms of understanding Dira B'Tachteinu, the mile and the Tachten, which is there, I have not seen anywhere else. Very valuable simon. And another simon that I would recommend also is Yigaris HaKodesh Simon Dalet. One of the classes on the upcoming Tchias HaMitzvah curriculum is based on that. A very Yisoidistic in terms of understanding Mashiach. So to recap what I said, number one, it doesn't make a difference what you learn as long as you're learning Yanigol Mashiach. It'll have an amazing pull on you. Number two, every chassid must learn the Aleph Nun Beis and be behavent in it and listen once in a while to Sikha from the Aleph Nun Beis. The Eidos are Mavil. And thirdly, back to the Yisoidus Tanya, Prakim Lamed Vav Lamed Zayin, and for extra credit, Igeres HaKodesh Siman Chaf and Siman Dalet.
Thank you. Rabbi Arla, before you address this issue, I just want to share with the crowd that we got good news, very, very good news, as far as we're concerned. I don't know about the listeners, but like the speakers, our bosses just wrote there's no time limit from the account. So we don't have to worry about it. We'll be able to answer questions afterwards. I know there's a number of questions that have come in, and I'd like to share them with the panel. I think you see that the panel was chosen, and the kavanah was met. Perfect. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Rabbi Arla, please. if you don't mind.
So with regards to Chayver perspective material to start with, I think what Naftali is 100% correct that really whatever talks to you, I mean, there's an abundance of information, and really whatever gets you going is obviously the best thing. But there are basics, and I think as far as the Rebbe's Torah is concerned, definitely now the Sichas and now the Beis. But in addition to the Rebbe's Torah, Mashiach is a broad sugya that there's a lot of classic sources. It's actually not so much, but there are a few basic classic sources that I think are important to know in the topic of Yonagul Mashiach, and especially since the Rebbe made such a focus of it. So I think the last two prakim in Rambam, in Hilchos Malachim, Perek Aleph and Yud Beis, is an absolute must. You can't move 1 inch in this topic without knowing those two prakim.
The JLI course.
Yeah, all the JLI courses are based on it, exactly. Just to give it a little bit of context, and I believe it's stated in one of the courses, because I know working with Rabbi Blazer on this, is that it's important to understand that as far as halacha is concerned, like the last word of what is going to be when Mashiach is going to come, and what do we need to know to determine who Mashiach is going to be, anything that we need to know, like concrete knowledge, not inspiration, which is obviously important. I just talk about concrete facts. The Rambam is the last and final say. The Rambam is considered the halacha. There's no other. It's not in Shulchan Aruch. It's not in the Tur. It doesn't appear anywhere else. The Rambam is the only halacha sefer who talks about Mashiach. And the Rebbe himself said this, that therefore the Rambam becomes the halacha psuka for anything related to Mashiach. So as a chassid, and the Rebbe returned to these prakim millions of times. So that's for sure. You must know. I mean, if we always learn it anyways, because we all do Rambam, of course. But it's a special focus.
Of course.
And to learn those two prakim and know them inside out, Perek Aleph and Yud Beis, at the last two prakim of Hilchos Malachim. In addition, there's also other stuff that the Rambam wrote that I think are important to know. There's some prakim in Hilchos Tshuva about Mashiach. The Rambam wrote Igeres Tchias HaMesim, which is also important to know about Mashiach. The Rambam expands, gives broader knowledge on what Mashiach is about. And I think those are, the Rambam is kind of our go-to for Mashiach. So I think it's important, if you want to have any basic knowledge of what Mashiach is about, the Rambam is, it's important to cover those things in Rambam. In addition,
I'm sorry.
last, I think also there's as far as modern day Sfarim are concerned, like Rabbi Blazer said, there's a lot of very good Sfarim. Rabbi Emmanuel Shachar Al-Vashom's Sefer, which is in English about Mashiach, is a very basic primer. Pretty much everything you need to know. It's all available online on Chabad.org, all the chapters with the footnotes. If you know that Sefer and look at all of his footnotes, you will be an expert on Yom Mashiach Gula, and that's
For sure.
that's a good start.
Thank you very much. I just want to emphasize that what the speakers, every one of these topics and suggestions are incredible. But if you're out there and you're not taking advantage of this campaign that I'm holding up here, that this is Dvar Malchus learning material. This is week 1. It is full, packed with practical sichos of the Rebbe in Hebrew, in English. If you're not with this program, you are definitely missing a major aspect of Talmud Torah. There's nothing to talk. I don't care who you are. You could be Mr. Teitelbaum in the elevator, or you could be sitting on Crown Corner, Kingston. It doesn't matter, like all three speakers, and specifically Rabbi Silverberg mentioned. This is where you want to go. I mean, think of it. This is I don't know, 100 pages, something like this. But this is an incredible work. Please get involved in this. I mean, you will not go wrong. You will not go wrong. If you have any questions on how to join, I think there's a website, tutaltz.org. I think that they will help you. All tracks can be found on tutaltz.com. Tut Altz, TUTALTZ.com. Previous weeks are available on tutaltz.com/JLI. So there's no excuse. I mean, we made it easy. You can sit at home and do this. You don't have to go. And of course, JLI courses, etc. I'm going to use, if you gentlemen are okay, I know here in California it's about coming up to 7:45, but I know in the East Coast it's getting a little later. Is it okay to go on just a little bit longer? Reb Lazer, I see Reb Naftali is shaking his head, and I don't see Rabbi Arla, but I'm assuming Rabbi Naftali is going to give him the thumbs up. So I'm gonna throw out some of the questions that came through during the hour. I'm gonna limit this. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is a topic on Inyani Guli Mashiach. Politics, I mean, I don't know if they're comfortable talking about politics, what's going on. It's a valid question, but I don't think that this is really the forum, to do that. But one question that I think that I would like, if you gentlemen wouldn't mind, is because we're talking about the relevance, and you feel it, you feel the passion in all three of you. And as the Rebbe wanted to make it real, that, we're getting closer. And as you wrote in this JLI course, that the world is going towards a better place. We've seen so many aspects, in technology and in medicine, and it's working. So how can you justify what we're seeing right now in Eretz Yisrael? Someone writes in. I mean, right now we're seeing that there are literally bombs falling, Rahman al-Islam, and how do you fit these two concepts in? We're talking about the greatness. We feel it. We taste it. And he's right around the corner. I mean, he's there, and yet you turn on the news, and we're back to step one. We're in trouble. And Reb Lazer, maybe you, and then we'll throw it to the others if you care. If you don't care to talk about this, I mean, this is a question that came from a listener, a viewer, I should say.
I think the first thing that we all need to recognize is that if the question is, what's the Eibishter thinking? The answer is, we don't know. It doesn't impact Emunah, however. The concept of Bias HaMashiach is one of the Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah, not the Yud Gimel Ikrei Hasaga. We understand Mashiach on many levels, but the foundation that we have to place first, before we say anything beyond that, is that we believe in the coming of Mashiach, and we believe that we are at the Hechsted Zeit, we are at the high time for the coming of Mashiach. And when things like this happen, it doesn't impact our Emunah. That's number one. Number two, the Rebbe spoke many times, especially during the early Mems, about the Welt treiselt sich, and that didn't change the fact that the Rebbe also talked at the very same time that this was the time for Mashiach's coming. In Tafshim Mem, those who remember, it was Tehei Shnas Mashiach. And then Tafshim Mem Aleph, the whole series of Tehei Shnas Mashiach went from there. And so it didn't interfere. The Rebbe would often bring from the Sefer Daniel that when Mashiach comes, Yisbarudu v'yislabnu hadvarim. I mean, for example, right now you can see that in the JLI offices, the lights went out. Does that mean that the JLI Central is not the source of light for the entire world for Torah
It does, but
teaching?
it shows that they haven't paid their bill. But okay, go ahead.
The point being, in the times of greatest darkness, the lights can shine brightest. And Yisbarudu v'yislabnu hadvarim is a very big part of the coming of Mashiach. Earlier, Reb Naftali was talking about the mashal of Chevle Leda, and indeed, the harshest times of pregnancy is the pangs of delivery. In fact, the same mashal is brought in Chassidus about the darkness of the night, that the time before Alois HaShachar is not only the darkest time. Recently, I saw in a mimer something that I don't recall seeing before. It wasn't talking so much about that it's the darkest time before dawn, but it's the time that we are most inclined to sleep. A weakness comes over us just before dawn, and we feel like we just are about to fall asleep. And yet, right then, dawn is about to come. And then I'd like to hear from the other panelists.
Very good. Rabbi Arla, you mind addressing this question? Again, this is, if you want to. I mean, it's. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what Rabbi Lazer said. I think the first point is the most important one, is that it's a Kari Emunah. It's something we believe in. We don't believe in it because it makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. We believe in it because it's the truth. And such events, if anything, they should make us expect more. They should make us want and hope that Mashiach is right just around the corner. And it should just make our tzipiyah all that more. I don't have much more to add.
Thank you. Naftali?
I don't think that we have answers. The Chavches Nisan began. That's when, I want to say, everything moved into a high pitch by the Rebbe of Mashiach, which lasted until Chav Zayin Adar in all the sichos, and the Rebbe kept on talking about Mashiach in a very and looking around the world and seeing Mashiach, and after the Egan, then as well known on days other, you had the murder of Aaron Cohen, so this is Pesha Leah Lapine, Hashem Yikim Dama, and the famous Sikha of Tessa there, and the Rebbe didn't try to contextualize it and explain how this is as part of Mashiach. At the same time, the Rebbe didn't retract anything that he said. He didn't say, "Oh, take a look." So we're taking a step backwards. He didn't say that. In other words, I'm a Tashayla, I a bitter galus. The chlolus things are getting better, and if I wanted, I can point even here and there, and things are getting better even in that shetach. But I don't think it's the geshay of Admasai. It's genug shaying. We're not here to justify these things. Yes, we look around the world, we see a lot of amazing things. We see the world progressing towards Mashiach. We're not here to justify the things that still are not to say that the Mashiach isn't here yet. And as the Rebbe said, we show us a kivinu kol hayeh. The Rebbe always screamed that we have to scream that.
Very good. Very good. We know.
Sicha of Hishayna Rabbah Memdalit must also be mentioned, where the Rebbe said that when we encounter the difficulties that we can't wrap our mind around, it's designed so that we should truly cry with a sincerity, truly, for the coming of Mashiach. We talked earlier about complacency and apathy and the idea that we may be burnt out. Well, we look at what's going on in Eretz Yisrael today, it's hard to deny that we are in need of a geula.
Totally, 100%, 100%. We know one of the Rebbe's love and caring towards children is unfathomed. I mean, you can't describe it unless you were there and saw it. How the Rebbe cared so much from the beginning of the Nesius about the Tzoyin Kadoshim, and when he established Tzivas Hashem, how much effort he put into children. I mean, the dollars came later, but in the beginning it was always tzedakah to the kids. The Rebbe would come to 770, see a child, give him a nickel, give him a dime. I mean, it's incredible what the Rebbe did to for the children. I know many parents struggle, first of all, of how to conceptualize Mashiach for themselves, but then how to really give it over to their kids. And we're not talking about Bachram of 17, 18, or 19. That's once they're out of the house, goodbye. It's the Mashiach's problem. Let Reb Nachman Shapiro worry about that. But we're talking about children. You're at your Shabbos table. They're in grades 1, 2, and 3. The Rebbe would want you to talk about this to them. They don't have this issue of controversy or apathy. They're clean. They have a clean slate. How can you give us maybe some words for a parent that may be a little stuck in this matter of how to explain such a unique concept of Mashiach to a child in first or second grade? Maybe we'd go the other way around, Rav Naftali, then Ireland, then Reb Lazer, maybe, or if you feel comfortable, Rav Naftali.
Bechlolus, in the area of chinuch, even though there's the idea of chanech l'nar pidarke, but in other words, you have to think about the specific needs of the child. But all chinuch really begins with role modeling, and this is true in all areas, even in behavioral areas. In other words, I could teach my kid how to eat like a mensch, and how to hold the fork, and how to hold the knife, and not to slurp, etc. Or I can role model that behavior. Sometimes you need a combination of both, but upon them without role modeling, nothing, it's not going to work. Al-achas kama v'kamba, we're not talking about a behavior over here. We're not looking for any specific behavior. It's a certain being alive with Leben, with Mashiach. What you're going to explain to your kid how to live with Mashiach? No, you don't explain that to your kid. If your kids are having an issue in this area, or there's a schwachkeit, that means you have to bechazik yourself in this area. And then the words will come automatically. So if your kids have a schwachkeit, probably you're not learning Yanagol and Mashiach enough. You're not listening to enough sichos and Altman base. It's very simple. Again, even a behavior you need a role model. Achas kama here. It's not any specific behavior. You want them to have a certain feeling, show them what it's like, and then it'll rub off. It'll rub off automatically.
No, that's extremely true. And as you said, I mean, there's a story of my shver, Reb Shimshon Stock. He went into Yechidus to the Rebbe. He has a Ben Yochid, my brother-in-law Benji, and he asked the Rebbe, please, I ask one request of you. My shver was not shy, and he said to the Rebbe, please, I just want Benji to become a Talmud Chacham. That's all. So the Rebbe looked at him and said, Shimshin, du wirst learning at Benji Yochid learning. Oh, that is not what my shver wanted to hear. And he thought to himself, okay, that's not going to happen. Let's see. Okay, let's go next question. No, but this was the Rebbe's, exactly what Naftali said. You wanted your kids to get involved in something. You got to be the ones. They see you learning the Naleflin base. They may not understand it, but absolutely 100% on the button. Barla?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think actually, I think children in a way are probably the easiest audience for such ideas. Like you said, children lack cynicism, Baruch Hashem. They haven't been tainted by life. And Mashiach is a natural, it's a natural concept. It's a natural concept to understand that we're on a progression, that we're going somewhere, that the Eibishter didn't intend the world to be the way it is now. I think we're all so used to looking at it that way that we find it a little hard to undo. Whereas children who have a natural sense of innocence, they lack cynicism. It's much more real. It's a natural, very easy thing. It's an easy sell, so to speak. I distinctly remember that when I was preparing this curriculum for a long time now, and a lot of like when I was really in it all the way was during the period when Corona first hit. So we were all home. So I was doing the work, late at night, and hiding behind my bedroom door from the kids to get another hour in. See, we were all home. There you go. We were all home, and I spent a lot more time with my own children than I regularly do. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. So, I remember it just poured out. We would sit around the table and eat lunch, breakfast. So we were together a lot. I mean, we all experienced this. We had nowhere to go. It was a lockdown, right? And every time I would just share another idea, another thing, because I was learning it. I was in it. So it was just kind of pouring out of me. And they ate it up. They ate it up. It was so natural. I had no problem delivering it because like I said, I think if anything, the children are the easiest audience. We're the hard ones.
Blazer?
I think that both of my Chavedim really hit the nail on the head. Rab Naftali will remember that he was the lead writer for a course that JLI developed on parenting. And I think it was at Rab Moshe Feinstein that he brought there in that course that touched me, and I never forgot that Rab Moshe said that if it's Alav Avecha, Yamot Ken Zayin Mishinantam Levanecha. So that's definitely, it was Rab Moshe, right, Naftali? So I would say Rab Naftali, but I can't put it in the same sentence, Rab Moshe, Rab Naftali.
It's a Hassam Sefer. Both of them are Moshe. It is Rab Moshe, but Rab Moshe Sefer.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
I mean, it's been a few years ago. I mean, this course was given a few years ago.
so even more gravitas, the Hassam Sefer Alain. And it's definitely, if it's Alav Avecha, if it's by us, Mamish, Afen Hartzen, and in Hartzen, then it's definitely going to bubble over to the children. And I think what Rabbi Loshek was saying is absolutely true, and we see it in our own experience. The children are the ones who believe and who absorb and who accept it more wholesomely and more fully than any of the adults. And it doesn't matter, Naftali was saying earlier that there is very little difference between Mendel Cohen in Crown Heights and Mr. Teitelbaum in the elevator in California. It's definitely true with children. It really doesn't matter if it's Mushki and Mendel or if it's Sam and Scott. It really doesn't matter who they are. The children love this fantastical notion about Mashiach, and everything you tell them only inspires them more. And there's a reason that Rebbe kocht so much in Beheshiv Levovis, Al Banim V'Leipanim Al Avoisam, that the children bring us back. I find in my own life, the children's enthusiasm about Mashiach is so infectious that it turns around and re-inspires me.
Thank you. Again, I can't push this enough. So you think that, okay, so the JLI guys sat down and wrote only for adults. So look here, look what you got here. Track number 6, children's curriculum. Any question that you have, I mean, unbelievable chaimer here. What is Mashiach? Is he a person? How to believe in him? Any question you have about how to educate your children, right here. Again, tutaltz.com, tutaltz.com. If you're not on it, if you're not there, you're square. You're square, you're not with it. Gentlemen, the hour is coming upon us. It's going to be 11 o'clock soon on the East Coast. I would like to finish this off by giving everyone an opportunity to give me a sum. Give me one sum. There was a lot of teichen tonight. I mean, just an incredible amount of insight from all three of you. And I take this opportunity to speak for myself, and I know all of the people that have been online, how important and how educational this was. This was absolutely worth time. I mean, people today are, they're so jealous of their time. This hour and a half was just great. I hope that tutaltz.com is going to publicize this out. I mean, and really, I mean, people need to hear this. So I would like to ask you to please finish give me a 1 minute, because I guess we are basically about a 1 minute, but if it goes over, I'm not gonna scream at you. So please, if you don't mind, again, we started with Reb Lazer, and then we went to Naftali. So how about we do Reb Arlet will go first, and then Reb Naftali, and then we'll finish with our first speaker, Reb Lazer, and we'll go from there. So Reb Arlet, if you want to give us just like a 1 minute, 1.5 minutes summary of tonight, what's your message?
If you want to make Mashiach relevant to your life, just learn about it. Learn about it as much as you can and bring it. The question is not fatigue. The question is not, why do I care? You don't care. And you don't care because you don't know about it. Learn a little bit about it, you'll start caring.
I think Coca-Cola should hire you. I mean, that was a pitch for the ages. I mean, you could, that's great. That's great. You don't care because you don't know. That's it, and that's why we're here tonight. It's time to know. That's why we call it time to know. And listen, take Rabbi Arla's words to heart. It's time to know. There's no great honor being an Amoritz. Nothing. I mean, it's nothing. Okay, but there's no great honor either, as they say. So thank you. Great, absolutely. Rabbi Naftali, you want to give us your last word? Please, Naftali, unmute.
Got it. Sorry. Okay. So in the JLI course, this can happen, but Mashiach, so we put in there at Dvar Malchus. Dvar Malchus is a sikha from Shabbos Agadol, Tavshin Memhei. And the Rebbe talks there about that the psyche, we want Mashiach now has to be a geshay that comes from the Pnimius HaNefesh. And the questions were asked before, so how do you convey Mashiach to others? And we said it all really starts with yourself. The Rebbe says in the Sikha, I'm reading it as we go, that this anhaga of screaming Mashiach now has to also express itself when you're going to speak with another person. The first thing you have to scream is Mashiach now. And scream it so much that the other person also begins to scream Mashiach now. So someone can say, how you talking? When you want to be pale of someone else, you have to act like a gentleman. The Rebbe used the word gentleman. First you have to say Shalom Aleichem. Then you will say, how are you doing? And as the Rebbe says, and you say in English, how do you do? And then you ask the person how his wife is doing, how his children are doing, how his parnas is doing. And afterwards you start talking about Yiddishkeit, Aleph, the Tov, until you reach Achar Sayyavim and you tell him Matat Mashiach. So, but start it when you need a yid to start screaming Mashiach now. That's a strange anhage. You have to be polite. You have to be a gentleman. What kind of impact are you going to make on someone else if you scream Mashiach now? So the Rebbe says the opposite is true. When you have a person who's 100% normal, dressed like a normal person, speaks like a normal person, and suddenly he begins to scream Mashiach now, dafke, that's the anhage, which is to be pale and then murdered by another person, their previous, and also to get the other person to scream Mashiach now also. There brings a story over here, which I'm not going to get into it, to the time that I've actually said a story about Rabbi Moshe Feller once had a incredible impact on another Yid by acting in a way which was L'mayla Medida Vagbala. What I'm saying is that if Mashiach is negay you benefesh, and when a Yid sees that, and you're screaming Mashiach now, that's how you'll get to other people to scream Mashiach now. How do you get Mashiach to negay by you? In Yanigol Mashiach, running in Yanigol Mashiach.
Thank you. Reb Lazer, you got the last word.
I want to close with the letter that the Rebbe said, that the Rebbe wrote to the third president of Eretz Yisrael. It's a well-known letter. It's a famous letter. Why did the Rebbe refuse to call him Nasi? Because the Rebbe says, I cannot possibly call you Nasi. And the Rebbe explains that Nasi has always been to him the Melech HaMashiach. And the Rebbe says that from his earliest youthful memories, even before I went to Cheder, I would visualize the glorious day in which Mashiach will come. And it would be so wonderful that it would help us understand all of the tragedies of Golus. When we read that letter, we stop and realize that the Rebbe always lived with Mashiach, and specifically, he visualized Mashiach. And that's something that we need to do. We need to learn, as Rabbi Loshek said before from Rambam, to get a very clear idea of what the world will look like when Mashiach will come. We need to learn, as the Rebbe said very often from Chassidus and Kabbalah, and the Rebbe will talk about Zohar, to understand from a pneumistic perspective. So, for example, Rabbi Naftali said earlier, Perek Lamed Vav and Lamed Zayin and Tanya, so we understand what it means that Mashiach will come. But then we need to sit down and be mizboinen. And specifically in English, that means to visualize. Visualize the coming of Mashiach and see it unfolding in front of our eyes. And feel ourselves get excited, feel ourselves begin to salivate, feel the heartbeat accelerate just a little bit, so that Mashiach can become something that we really yearn for, that we really desire. Relevancy is something we addressed earlier tonight. That Mashiach needs to be more relevant to us. If we visualize it, then it'll be relevant to us. Then it'll enter, then it'll permeate. And that's an important key for living with Mashiach.
Thank you. Gentlemen, no thanks can be said enough for this evening. I mean, I know the hour and a half went by like this. I mean, usually when you talk about Yoni Golim Mashiach, another hour to me was not enough. I apologize to everyone that put in questions. There were just too many questions. I mean, you can always, the gentlemen are available. If you go to JLI, just go myjli.com. You can reach Reb Naftali, you can reach Reb Arla. Chabad of London, Ontario, you can reach Rabbi Gurkov. If you have any questions that you would like to direct them, that I take full responsibility of not asking your question. It had nothing to do with censors or anything like that. It's just time limitations. Thank you, Rabbi Silverberg. Thank you, Rabbi Loshak. Thank you, Rabbi Gurkov. Thank you to the office of Mashiach in Merkas 302. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Reb Shlomo Naparstik, who's, I don't know if he's on here tonight. I don't see him on my screen, but he arranged all of this, and he is working tirelessly, to promote this. Tutaltz.com. They produce tremendous amount of literature, great literature. He uses all the resources from JLI and everything else that's involved in Sichas in English. I mean, thank you so much, Shlomi. Now, to everyone that's listening, you've heard them. You've heard the gentleman. You've heard the insight. So many brilliant thoughts tonight, a lot of information. I would review this. I mean, there's so much information. But the bottom line is, all three of our panelists would say the same thing: get involved. I used to have a teacher in school that says you'll never learn how to swim by standing on the side of the ocean, looking at the water and understanding how beautiful the ocean is never going to teach you how to swim. You got to get in there, jump in there, feet first. You'll splash around for a little bit, you'll look around, but ultimately you'll learn how to swim, and that's going to be so enjoyable. The Rebbe said at that famous Sikha, Ich gebe es über zu euch. I'm giving it over to you. I mean, with all the interpretations and all of the big, smarter people than me and how they interpreted this and how they learned this and how this, the bottom line is, this is what the Rebbe said. You could look at the Sikha, Ich gebe es über zu euch. It's you out there in the world. It's me. It's my family. It's you. It's your family. It's every single Yid. From all the 10 Madregas of Yidden, from the top to the bottom, each and every one of us has this responsibility of doing their thing to bring Mashiach. And one of the things that the Rebbe stressed is learning about it. besides everything else, besides giving tzedakah, which we need so desperately today, you know, with the matzav in Eretz Yisrael, and the davening, and the tehillim, and the mitzvahs, and the hiddur mitzvahs, and all the things of learning chassidus, this has to become part and parcel of who we are. There's no excuses anymore. The material is out there. It is out there. Everything you need to do is you can sign up at Tut Altz, TUTALZ.com. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. That's it. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. I can't look anymore to the left, to the right of me and say, you know, he'll bring, she'll bring, they'll do it. It's each and every one of us. And there's no more powerful force in the world than when you can get together. The Am Nifkar, the people that we are walking towards Shavuos right now. At Matan Torah, the Eibishter gave us a challenge to bring Elikus into the world. So who did he give it to? To Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Moshe Rabbeinu brought it down to the Eden. Every single Yid then, and every single Yid now is attached and bound by this idea of Torah. And by us giving our effort as much as you can and as little as you can, but doing something to this will further the cause of the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And as our brothers and sisters are struggling now in Eretz Yisrael, we want to do whatever we can. Like Natalia said before about the woman that is pregnant, and about the sick and the sister. Wouldn't you do everything you want to do something to help the Yidden Eretz Yisrael? This is a surefire way of doing something positive. So ladies and gentlemen out there, please, from us, we thank you for tuning in tonight and for viewing this, but also tuning in is nice and listening to the speakers is great. They were fantastic, learned a lot tonight, but the key is that after we close out, we do something positive. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, a panelist. It was a pleasure working with you. You behaved very well. Everyone within their time limit. No one took advantage of the situation that I happen to be a nice guy. So I really appreciate that. I didn't have to bring the Gevura into it. Thanks a million. Thank you again to the Mashiach office, and may be well. And with the last word, may Hashem Yisbarach. I know that this is something that we want more than ever right now. And I know that the Rabbeinu Shalom loves when Yidden learn about Inyane Gula Mashiach. He loves it. He loves when we pick up a Rambam. He loves when we pick up a Sikha. He loves when we learn a Perek Tanya. He loves it. He loves when children scream, "We want Mashiach now." And he knows. And the Eibishter knows that when Mashiach is going to come, it's not going to be the same pleasure, because, you know, all of the Hafstei and the Alamas and Esterim will be white. So he loves it. So we're begging you to the Rabbeinu Shalom, please, we're asking you to give up some of your pleasure. Yes. I know it's pleasurable to see Yidden perform Torah mitzvahs, and Moshe Rabbeinu himself was jealous on this dair. I understand that. We all understand that. But we're asking you to please give up some of your pleasure. We promise that when Mashiach comes, we'll continue to do even more than you expect of us. Just finally finish off this job and do what the Rebbe fought for from that first Farbrengen, fought tirelessly. Let's see the end of this. Send Mashiach Tzidkenu, take if miyad mamish, so we can go to Yerushalayim HaKodesh to celebrate Chag HaShavuos this year with the third Beis Hamikdash b'mheira v'yameinu mamish.
Amen.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi Perlmutter.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Agresa Yashikayach.